US-Iran talks show signs of progress. Can diplomacy prevent another crisis? Have you ever wondered how close the world might be to a major conflict without most people even realizing it? Today, we're talking about one of the most important diplomatic developments happening right now, the latest negotiations between the United States and Iran. After months of rising tensions, threats of new attacks, and fears of military escalation, both sides have returned to the negotiating table in Switzerland. And according to mediators, the first round of talks has produced what they're calling encouraging progress. Could this be the beginning of a breakthrough? Or is it simply another temporary pause in a long and complicated rivalry? Let's break it all down. The first round of negotiations between the United States and Iran recently concluded in Switzerland, a country that has often served as neutral ground for sensitive international discussions. The talks come at a critical moment, as tensions between the two nations have been growing once again. For decades, the relationship between Washington and Tehran has been marked by distrust, disagreements, and periodic crises. Issues ranging from Iran's nuclear program to regional security concerns have repeatedly brought the two countries to the brink of confrontation. In recent weeks, those concerns intensified following warnings and threats of possible new military actions. Analysts feared that a single miscalculation could trigger a wider conflict involving not only the United States and Iran but potentially several countries across the Middle East. That's why these negotiations are attracting global attention. One of the most notable aspects of the talks is the leadership role being played by Vice President JD Vance. Rather than relying solely on traditional diplomatic channels, the administration has elevated the importance of these negotiations by assigning one of the country's highest-ranking officials to oversee the process. Political observers say this move signals that Washington views the discussions as a major foreign policy priority. According to reports from mediators involved in the process, the first round ended on a positive note. While no final agreement has been reached, both sides reportedly demonstrated a willingness to continue discussions and explore possible compromises. The mediators described the atmosphere as constructive and highlighted what they called encouraging progress toward a potential final agreement. The current goal is ambitious, a comprehensive 60-day deal that could address several of the most pressing issues dividing the two countries. Although specific details remain confidential, experts believe the negotiations are likely focused on security guarantees, sanctions relief, regional stability, and limitations related to Iran's nuclear activities. These topics have long been at the center of international debates. Supporters of diplomacy argue that a negotiated settlement could significantly reduce the risk of military conflict. They believe that dialogue offers a pathway to stability and could create opportunities for broader cooperation in the future. However, skeptics remain cautious. History has shown that negotiations between the United States and Iran are rarely straightforward. Previous agreements have faced political opposition, implementation challenges, and sudden reversals. As a result, many analysts are warning against excessive optimism. Even if progress is being made behind closed doors, numerous obstacles remain before any final agreement can be signed. The stakes are incredibly high. A successful deal could have consequences far beyond Washington and Tehran. For global energy markets, reduced tensions could help stabilize oil prices. Investors often react strongly to developments in the Middle East because the region remains one of the world's most important energy-producing areas. For international security, a diplomatic breakthrough could lower the chances of military escalation and provide reassurance to allies concerned about regional stability. For ordinary citizens, the outcome could affect everything from fuel prices to economic confidence and geopolitical security. That's why governments around the world are watching these talks closely. European nations, many of which have traditionally supported diplomatic engagement with Iran, are hopeful that the negotiations can continue moving forward. Meanwhile, countries throughout the Middle East are carefully evaluating how any agreement could affect regional power dynamics. Some leaders view diplomacy as the best path toward reducing tensions. Others worry that concessions by either side could alter the strategic balance in the region. This mix of optimism and caution reflects the complexity of the situation. Another important factor is public opinion. In both the United States and Iran, political leaders face domestic pressures. Any agreement must not only satisfy negotiators at the table but also gain support from influential political groups at home. That challenge often proves just as difficult as the negotiations themselves. History is filled with examples of diplomatic agreements that appeared promising during talks but later encountered resistance once the details became public. For that reason, the coming weeks may be just as important as the discussions already completed. The next phase of negotiations is expected to focus on narrowing differences and transforming broad principles into specific commitments. This is where diplomacy often becomes most difficult. General statements about cooperation are one thing. Agreeing on exact timelines, verification measures, enforcement mechanisms, and mutual obligations is another matter entirely. Still, the fact that both sides are continuing to engage is being viewed by many experts as a positive sign. At a time when international tensions seem to dominate headlines, even modest diplomatic progress can be meaningful. The possibility of a 60-day framework agreement suggests that negotiators are working toward concrete objectives rather than simply holding symbolic meetings. Whether those objectives can be achieved remains uncertain. But for now, the tone emerging from Switzerland is considerably more hopeful than many observers expected. As the world waits for updates from future rounds of talks, one question remains at the center of the conversation. Can diplomacy succeed where confrontation has repeatedly failed? The answer could shape not only the future relationship between the United States and Iran but also the stability of an entire region. For now, all eyes remain on Switzerland, where negotiators are attempting to turn cautious optimism into lasting progress. And as these discussions continue, the world will be watching every step. What do you think? Will these negotiations lead to a historic breakthrough, or are the challenges simply too great to overcome? Let us know your thoughts in the